All right, I want to go ahead and take your seats. We're going to get started again, and welcome back our participants who are with us virtually today. If you're watching this because it's recorded and you're streaming it in our portal, you can always email our team with questions, of course. And if you're watching this virtually, you can submit your questions on Zoom. And then my team will get me the questions here on WhatsApp, and I'm happy to answer those in front of the room in real time if you'd like to. I hope everyone got a lot out of this morning. I think hearing the unique perspective from Julian, from Darwin, from Brad, and combining that with comments from the audience and what I had prepared up here, there's a lot of common themes that come up. Darwin getting emotional about the support from his investors just on communicating and being transparent and genuine is somewhat related to us saying the relationship matters more than the context of the deal. It's related to Brad telling his story and sharing what he's done recently. So I hope you enjoyed seeing all of that and hearing about it as well. All right, so right before lunch, we started talking about positioning. Now in this section, we're going to continue to talk about that and explain how it's so helpful and why it's so helpful. Got a little bit of an echo going on, Daphne. I'm not sure why. It might be the mic turned up super high. I'm not sure. I'll move it down a little bit. Probably something wrong I'm doing here. There we go. Thank you, Mo. So this diagram here explains why a lot of deals get done, and it's related to everything I just said. Most deals get done because there's trust in the leadership, people understand an industry, or they're local to the opportunity, and they can walk it in person. When you first start raising capital, you usually raise capital from friends and family, and that is trust in the leadership or trust in you, right? So that's where people start. If you can find people that invest in self-storage every day or invest in stem cell therapy centers every day, and they know the space cold, and you have an amazing opportunity, then they're going to probably recognize your value, and they're more likely to invest than a total stranger who has no idea about your industry, right? Also, if someone's local to the opportunity, they might not know you, they might not know the industry, but it's pretty easy then to get them comfortable with the project. If you raise capital from people who don't know you, don't know your industry, and they're not local to you or the deal, you're pretty much dead in the water, and you're probably not going to close many of those investors. If you meet them at some national investor summit, well, now they do know you, and you can run with that, and they might be familiar with your industry, and you can go with that. And what I'd like to say is that, like, every time you go into any meeting, you have to think, does this person already know me, the industry? And how do I get them to walk the property, to see the manufacturing plant? If these three things are high, you're highly likely to close the deal. So when you think about what you should educate your average investor on, is your average investor somebody who is a dentist and you're raising capital for dental practices? Well, then that's wildly different than if you're raising capital for something that's complex, like data centers and some solar powered data center project, and you're trying to sell it to high net worth investors that have never been inside a data center, have never touched one or invested in one. It's more of a foreign topic. Then you need to focus more on teaching them the industry, or focus more on approaching people that understand why more data centers will be needed when the data needs of AI, go up 1,000-fold in the future, right? And so just think about this for your average prospect. It changes all your positioning, your materials, what you should educate on, who you want to attract, what words you should use, et cetera. Also think about what type of investor are you really targeting? If you're running a litigation hedge fund, then maybe you raise capital from law firms that can refer you cases, and they already understand why somebody might need a court case backed that has a likely chance of winning, right? And so figure out what are the types of investors that are predisposed to move forward with you. Who are your best investors right now? Who are most profitable? What attributes do they have in common? And how do you find them congregated within networking groups, events, associations? How do you find them in their backyard? The first day we turned our Facebook ads on in Key Biscayne, we had the billionaire founder of Minecraft walk into our offices and say, "Hey, I'm like a tech nerd. How did you target me?" And he brought in his stroller. We met him and followed up with him. But sometimes that type of good fortune happens, and then other times you keep the same targeting, and it might not happen for quite a while, right? But you increase your chances of getting lucky when you put yourself out there. But if you already know what's been working to date, then you can just be laser focused on that going forward. And so I was speaking with Eric, I think it was earlier, and he said that he's not sure on the exact avatar. And so what I do is either try 2 at a time and just double down on what's working, or try 1 at a time with full effort. And then if it's not working at all and I can't fix it after a couple tries, then I switch to the next avatar and try it full on and learn faster versus trying 5 different things. Or, oh, we just raised capital from high net worth investors. Like that's just basically saying anyone with money that's not focused at all, right? It's very different than with the Deep Due Diligence Investor Club. Um, we've put $10 million to work into deals so far. We have 50 high net worth investors in there. The website is duediligenceclub.com. And Mark Halpern is the co-founder of that, and I'm a 50% partner in it. And with that club, for some reason, we attract $1 to $10 million net worth, mostly people that have technical scientific backgrounds. Like we don't know really why, but it made us think, okay, well, maybe something unique would be to go on a podcast for civil engineers or mechanical engineers or data scientists or some other sort of podcast where there's probably not too many people on there raising capital, right? Most people aren't targeting that group. But if you speak to them and speak your language, and now we customized our AI tool for that investor club to look at the first principles aspects of the fundamentals of what drives the business. We looked at a falsibility test of like, if this was true, then it breaks their whole model and you should not invest in the deal. We have like a hype meter on the deals when we have the due diligence AI go through it. So it says, is this mostly signal or mostly noise? Is it a bunch of unsubstantiated hype? Or does this seem like legitimate value and it's real and genuine? So that's dialing it into your investor avatar. So it's really powerful to do that. People like to invest with other people like them, whether it's pro athletes, lawyers, dentists, people from a certain country, people from a certain university. It goes back to the influence principle of similarity and liking. If somebody has something in common with you, they more likely trust that if you're eating those blueberries off the bush and not dying, that maybe you should eat those blueberries too, right? And it's like in our DNA to follow what others are doing. They've even shown that in New York City, where you can easily be killed by some speeding car in a crosswalk, like people will go across the crosswalk, not even look if a car is coming. If somebody dressed similar to them is walking across, whether it's a walk sign or a stop sign, but if somebody is dressed differently, they do not trust their judgment to cross. They'll look first. And they've scientifically proven that's the case. That shows how subconscious, automatic all of these types of decisions are. It's also one reason why I stopped wearing a three-piece suit and a tie, because I realized that the wealthiest of families were not wearing that. The bankers and the attorneys who were selling services were wearing that more, because not only is it a little bit more comfortable, it just was something that was like, okay, well, my wealthiest clients, are not dressing up and wearing like close to a tuxedo to events. So, but whatever someone's style is, like Brad says, I think is probably what you should do. So this is what happens if you say that you're a hedge fund and you're absolute return focused and you do well in up and down markets. And the markets go down, you do even better. That's what everyone in the hedge fund industry says. If you're multifamily, it's like, oh, we buy 1970s to 90s properties and put 10 or 20K per door and force appreciation and raise rents on mom and pop properties that were under monetized. And most people are saying the same thing. So like when you do that, you're in an inbox. This is what it looks like in someone's email inbox. They don't know whether you should reply to this guy, this girl, et cetera. It's just a mob of stuff coming at people, right? Instead, you want to carve out your sandbox to be super specific and targeted. So you just have 3 people, 1 other person, nobody in that sandbox. And then they can decide, do I want to be in that sandbox or not? Do I want to allocate to that area or not? And you can easily guess who might be the tallest or the youngest. On this beach, you can't. You don't know who the tallest, the oldest, the youngest, the smartest is. It just looks like a mob and you just disengage because it's just hopeless to guess who they should engage with, right? David Goggins basically says that average equals death. Like if you're average and you're unhealthy, you're in debt, you're likely to get divorced or drink too much, et cetera. And he basically was 300 and some pounds eating potato chips on the couch and then saw a Navy SEAL TV show, tried to apply, and they said, no, you'd have to lose 90 pounds to apply. You're never going to be a Navy SEAL, and laughed at him. Then he became a Navy SEAL, and now he's got millions of copies of his book sold and has done 3,000 pull-ups in a day and a bunch of other crazy stuff in a multi-million-dollar a year business. But he talks about not being one of 10,000 on a beach, quite often. So Vern Harnish is a founder of EO, and he wrote a book, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. He says that you should really look at everything you're doing or everything you could do in the market, and what's the 7% that could make 70% of all the profits. At one point, Apple had 7% market share, but 51% of all the profits in the mobile phone marketplace. That means everyone else had 93% market share, but we're making less money, right? So they had to do a lot more work to make a lot less money. So you want to figure out, how do you be different in a unique way, be valuable, and what could you be number one at? We're going to give you a number of ways to think about that. Usually people don't niche down enough. It's a niche within the niche. Dan Sullivan says that as you focus more on a niche, then the opportunities multiply. And like Peter Thiel saying, moving in concentric circles, Sun Tzu says that opportunities multiply as they're seized. Once you get one thing done and it has success, it leads to the next thing. So there's one family office that only serves German families that live in New York who are ultra wealthy. So they go to German religious festivities, they're in German networking groups, they know the banks, they know the tax treaties. If you're super wealthy and you're in New York and you're German, you've at least heard of this group, and why would you not at least meet with them? They probably don't have to do a hard sales pitch. They're super specialized, as Brad emphasized. There's a family office in London that just serves French families living in London. And that's how niche it is. You're not just a family office focused on London, you're serving French families in London. So there's many examples of this. We have a surgeon that runs a podcast, and we're rebranding the podcast and kind of relaunching our Doctors Investor Club under his direction so that we can partner on there, bring in 1,000 doctors onto the platform, offer them access to our events as accredited investors, as long as they're doctors and dentists and surgeons, et cetera. And that's an example of a niche. There's only 10 seriously ran investor clubs for doctors on planet Earth, and we think with the 4 million plus a year we invest in Family Office Club, we can do a pretty good job giving our AI tools and events, and then the knowledge the surgeon has running the community. So that's an example of a niche focus. And it makes sense for us because we have medical clinic capital, which we focus on multi-location, profitable medical dental practices that we invest in. So it just makes sense to align those things. So I'm going to combine here a model from Jim Collins, along with 3 criteria that I like to focus on top of it. Jim calls this like the hedgehog strategy of like, what are you really passionate about and you have fun doing and it's exciting? What can make you a lot of money? And what does your DNA allow you to do? What are you already pretty good at? Because you could be really passionate about playing basketball and you think it'd make you a lot of money if playing in the NBA, but if you're 5'10" and not 6'10", you might not have the DNA to give you a great chance of doing that. Some people pull it off, but not many, right? And if you are in a business right now and you're not really passionate about it, then you're the one that's going to be streaming Netflix on every airplane flight. Now that's bad to relax, while the competition improves their website, emails someone back right away, helps the investor, creates more thought leadership, figures out how to do Instagram or YouTube, makes the podcast, writes the book, and does the things that we talk about today. And so if it doesn't make money, it won't expand, et cetera. So you need all these things happening to say yes to something. Plus, I found that if you figure out what your biggest strength is and you figure out what has massive future demand or the most demand, but also low competition, then that's where it can be magical. Because if you go into something with tons of competition, everything else can line up, but it can be horrible. Because it's just a slog and like, oh yeah, well, I've already heard that from 19 people. So what do you do that's different, right? So you want to do something, the trick is to not be better at competing, but to do something where you're not even competing against others in the eyes of the person hearing it, because I don't know anyone else that does that thing. And it's relatively hard to do. But if you align things that only meet all 6 criteria, then you enjoy your work more and it's more fun to work on because it's exciting and it's more likely to go exponential. And I mentioned at the beginning, the tide matters more than the swimmer from Warren Buffett. Gary Vee often says, like, if you're always chasing the herd, then at best you're going to be trailing the herd, right? Or tracking the herd. You need to position yourself where you think the tide will come in the future, and the tide is slowly rising, and it's going to be exponentially rising. And then position yourself there, because then by the time the tide rises, you already have this preeminent position. If you're trying to create preeminence and it's already a high tide, and it's already an obvious tide, then the masses are there. And you better have some tweak or super laser focus within that high tide because there's so much competition, right? So this is super important to clear decision making. And one of the reasons why I like AI, it makes you look at things in a multifold way rapidly and evolve your ideas very quickly. But in all of our markets, everything's getting more competitive, right? Like in the 1930s, it was Kellogg's flake cereal competing against grits and oatmeal and eggs and bacon. And like that was the competition when it came to cereal. Nowadays, you have a locally sourced, organic, vegan, Democrat frosted wheat thing with like fake sugar, right? So it's dialed into like every single possible demographic on types of cereals now. There's 800 cereals out there. And that's true for real estate, private equity. There's literally 10,000 private equity firms out there, 10,000 real estate firms. And so if you want to compete, you need to be dialed in. That's why we talk about an avatar. That's why we're talking about positioning. If you don't, you're just dead in the water. And sometimes people come to us and say, hey, I got this investor database, but I emailed them. I'm not getting any responses. What is this investor database? And it's like, okay, well, I don't control your email address, your email signature, your structure, your offer, your one-liner that doesn't exist, the pitch deck. Do you have a one-pager? The timing, did you follow up 8 times in a day or one time over 8 years? We don't control like any of that stuff, right? These are just in our databases. We have people that come to our events that you can meet, of course, but in our databases, if you spent 3,000 hours on Google, like our data researchers have, you could build your own database. It's just painful and takes forever. But these aren't all of our best friends. They're just investors that exist on planet Earth according to what's publicly available. So if they don't reply to your email, it's just gravity on planet Earth that you're complaining about. What was that? Right, or does it even get to their inbox, right? And that's another big issue is just the delivery of it itself. So basically, if you're highly specialized, you're much more likely to get a response. If you do all the things we talked about today, you're much more likely to get a response. And even better, if they're reaching out to you, they're much more likely to respond once you reply to them because they're the one asking for something. David Ogilvy built a massive business in his 30s because he read everything on his industry, became over specialized in direct response marketing. And I got invited to speak at the European Business Summit when I was 26 years old when I started this business. And I shouldn't have gotten invited to speak, but it's someone's job to find an expert on like family offices and capital raising, and they invited me, and I was too nervous to even eat that day. There was two prime ministers on stage at the same event, and I'd never spoken anywhere in my life, and they flew me all the way to Europe for free, and so my now wife came with me there, and basically I realized while speaking there, like, oh, okay, well, they invited me to speak because I had written like 500 blog posts on these topics. And I guess they're like, wow, he wrote 500 blog posts. You're not going to mess it up. He's like an authority. Let's fly him over to Europe and he'll speak on it. Can't find anyone else. So I said, okay, it's interesting. And I ended up speaking in Moscow and Cayman Islands and Liechtenstein and Monaco, et cetera. And while in Monaco, my wife was with me there as well. And what was interesting is that everybody said, oh, because I had this blog back then, they said, oh, you're the hedge fund blogger guy. And they would come up to her and be like, oh, you're the wife of the hedge fund blogger guy? And she came up to me and was like, why does everyone keep on calling you the hedge fund blogger? And I was like, well, that's what I call myself on the hedge fund blog that talks about capital raising, family offices, and hedge funds. And we realized like, well, that's kind of stupid, right? Like, why do you want the position of the hedge fund blogger? And then I realized like, I can create whatever position I want. Like whatever you want to be seen as an authority on, just pump out more helpful authority, genuine, authentic, fresh content on that niche topic than anybody else. And then people will say, oh, you are the authority on that topic. And it doesn't mean you're like instantly preeminent, but people see you as an authority. And like realizing I could be an authority on like anything I wanted to within reason-ish, then I was like, okay, well, let's choose something that's not going to go out of style. People might not want hedge funds forever. They might not want some niche forever, but they're always going to want access to capital. So I'll latch onto the family office thing and position around Family Office Club, buyfamilyoffices.com, write some of the first book ever with the word single family office in the name of it, the first book ever with the word centimillionaire in the name of it, the first book on how to start a family office, et cetera. And then that's how we got to where we are today, was this realization that you can specialize yourself in whatever niche you want. And no one's going to come tap you on the shoulder and say, you're now anointed to be an authority on this. Authority is taken, not given. No one's going to give you permission to be the authority on a niche. You make yourself the authority on the niche by explicitly deciding that. Yes?
Based on your experience, do you think medium matters, like newsletter versus blog versus LinkedIn?
Yeah, good question. Does the medium matter? Yeah, for sure. I think it does. First is like, if you know where your investor demographic is, just focus on that. If you're naturally good and you're just going to move way faster on one area, then I would just start with that to get momentum. For us, we like LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. And actually, just today we got engaged officially for a 6-figure agreement to be the outsourced chief investment officer for a family office. And they met me because the father watched all of our YouTube videos, loved them, reached out. We had an hour Zoom. Then we had a 3.5-hour breakfast. And then we ended up engaging over time after they got to know us. And the reason I bring that up is it was all from YouTube. And for whatever reason, YouTube gets us 2 to 4 times the traction that the podcast does. But when you create a YouTube video, you can strip the audio out, pump it out on a podcast. And you can have both without a lot of extra effort and be found in multiple places. And repurposing content we'll get to in a minute. But we really focus on that kind of 3 point is now we're starting to focus more on Instagram. So we realize a lot of our audience is on Instagram, which is why I wanted Brad. Selfishly, I just wanted to hear what he was doing. So I do these events really for me, right? It's like, yeah. So I was taking notes back there on how to do that in a way that's kind of natural for me or whatever. But yeah, I would definitely. I think the medium matters like a ton. You want it to be easy to consume, helpful, and nowadays with AI making everybody an instant expert, you'll see like a 17-year-old telling you like the 10 fundamentals of the family office world based on all of his experience, which is probably what I looked like when I was 26, right? But nowadays with AI, anyone can pump out an article like they are the absolute expert and have actually credible data points, have it eloquently written and everything. So I think like the video can be done, but it's harder to do. And the more it's genuine and done on like video and not just written, I think it's better. Yeah. Any other questions on this? Mark Cuban says you don't have to have all the capital or connections in the world. You just have to focus on a niche and then learn everything about it and just suck in all the knowledge because no one else will want to. He said it changed his life when he got a job in college selling software. He didn't have to sell the software. He worked in the software store and it was his first job. So he was nervous about it. So he read the software manual. It's like 130 pages. And the first day, someone walked in, had a question. He's like, "Oh yeah, well that's on page 89. That's not hard. Didn't you read the software manual?" And they're like, "Well, no, I didn't read it. I don't have time for that." And then like the next person came in, and on the first day, he said he realized no one read the manual, no one at all. And he said even the owner of the software franchise business had never read the software manual. And that's when a light bulb went off. He's like, "Oh, everybody is basically lazy. If I just read the manual, then things are amazing. It's easy." And he said that like to this day, he tells that story and talks about that in his book. And he was like, just read the software manual, read everything. But you can't read everything on everything. There's 400,000 scientific journals. You have to specialize. There's no way to be an expert. And so reading everything on a very tiny niche is basically part of the insight there. Because David Ogilvy would say when he goes to a pitch meeting, like, here's what they're going to tell you, American Airlines. Here's what all my competition is going to say, because I've heard their pitches, I've read their books, I've listened to their talks. They're going to say something that sounds just like this, this, and this. And here's the 3 reasons why we're way better. And direct response is going to make you a lot more money. So you should hire us and let me know what you think and let me know if they say exactly what I told you they would. And then they would, and then hit to get the account. So it was disrupting. So this slide, I put $100,000 to make it more believable, but this slide could be worth millions of dollars to someone here in the room that implements it. So identify a keyword phrase you're going to own. And I would encourage you to write that down in your notes because it might be one of the top 10 things that you come away with today. Like, what is the phrase you're going to own? Examples of phrases that we've tried to own or do own a large percentage of is how to start a family office, centimillionaire strategies, even the words family office club. We bought capitalraising.com, investorclub.com because we want to have some market share and like the focus on that. And so figure out what is the niche. Is it senior living centers in Austin, Texas? Is it stem cell therapy centers in San Diego? Whatever the niche within a niche is that you want to own long term, you should write that down and aim to dominate that. If you don't have the goal to be number one in something so valuable, if you ever became number one, it would change your life and bring in millions of dollars, then you're not going to want to do any of the work that we talk about in the next section called architecting your position. Because having the awesome position that's super powerful might sound great in your head, but until you do any work to position yourself, no one knows that you are the rocket scientist that they should trust and hire. There's thousands of people maybe with a level of expertise that could be comparable to yours, or maybe hundreds or maybe dozens, but one person might get the backing of the investor. So that one person is going to be the one most trusted, most known, or the person that they know or respect the most. So that's super important. You have to have crystal clear advantage. We talked about that with the one-liner, but it has to be night and day different than what everyone else is doing and be amazing to the demographic you're approaching. Evan Pagan taught me to look at things on making it inevitable. What would make it inevitable? You'd raise twice as much capital, 10 times as much capital. Or inevitable, you'd see the best deals, get the best deal flow. If you have the right strategic choke point, then everything else should go faster and costs of what was your bottleneck should go down, time or monetary cost. And so there's all different types of strategic choke points. It could be you normally have a cost of doing real estate transactions, and you get into the the real estate or private equity brokerage transaction business. And you not only make it so you don't have to pay a broker, at least you're sharing a brokerage fee instead of paying the whole for private equity deals you do, but also you might get to cherry pick the best deals that come towards that brokerage shop. And now you have better deal flow and you cut your costs in half on transaction costs. It could be distribution access. Many times it's distribution. It's getting access to more investors. It's getting access to more deal flow. It's getting access to Costco or a big wine and spirits distributor. If you lock in distribution, the person who controls distribution controls everything that happens, right? There's a strait in the Middle East that Iran might shut down. 20% of all the world's oil flows through that strait. So whoever controls that, every major country in the world has military bases lining that little area because it's a choke point and nobody wants somebody else to fully control or shut it down. That's a good example. Protectable IP, buying, billionaires.com, for example, now that we own it, even though Goldman Sachs or someone that doesn't just have 20 employees, it's a tiny company, should probably be the one running that. We were able to get it. So now the definition of a choke point is something that is strategic, that once you acquire it is hard for others to acquire or impossible because you have already acquired it. So these are all different examples of choke points. Another example would be, let's say you're in the drinks business and we had an investor in this space and there's an 80,000 person food expo in New York City. Even if you only owned 1% of that food expo and made that your investment first, you could go around at that expo and say, oh, one of the owners of the expo, just seeing if you're enjoying it. What are you guys doing? And then you could say like, oh, well, we're really familiar with X, Y, and Z because they're at our event today. And by the way, if we ever ended up investing with you, we could make some introductions to some of our top sponsors, such as Safeway, Albertsons, et cetera, and maybe put you in the front of the expo next year for just $10,000 instead of $70,000. If we could invest at a good valuation, we'll make the pie 3 times larger, and it's going to be good for both of us to strike a deal, right? And if you owned or had exposure in a drinks magazine or the top LinkedIn group in the space, or you're just in the flow and you had the #1 influencer on Instagram for drinks or whatever the niche is, those are all things that could help you get access to investors in flow of different types. Another example that cost nothing was when we put together a single family office for one group. We call it the Miami Family Office. We get deal flow to this day, and we have like 5 out of the 10 Google search results for Miami Family Office. And so that just helped us get in the flow of deal flow coming through South Florida. Another example that does cost money is a family in Berlin. When I was at an investment event, heard them explain that they invested in a mineral rights survey and airplane. Instead of going out and investing $2 million in a mineral rights cattle rancher had in Africa or somewhere, what they would do is buy this airplane and go to the people owning thousands of acres and say, let us survey your land. You normally have to pay $250,000 to get that done. We'll just charge you $10,000 for the gas and pilot. It's going to take us 3 days. And then we split the upside on anything we find. And that way you're not out the risk. And the bottleneck for the cattle rancher was they just want to pay $250,000 and roll the dice to maybe win the lottery of have mineral rights. And now the strategic investor bought one asset and then they can milk that cow every day without slaughtering the cow, right? I think that's the key. So that's where I try to invest my money is like, I'm building out Doctors Investor Club. We've had 50 plus pro athletes speak at our events, and I own proathleteclub.com. And we're looking for the right quarterback, quote unquote, long term to really like run that, grow that, maybe someone with a big podcast in the space or a big name in the space, et cetera. So those are examples of me wanting to grow and acquire choke points. Same with social media exposure. We get investor and deal flow through that. And the next investor club with the most followers has 2 million, and we have 17 million. So as we grow that to 100 million, it's just going to be a massive moat around others in the space that will allow us to see more things and then pick the 1 out of 1,000. So Mastering the Rockefeller Habits is a chapter on this. If you want to dive into it, we have a 70-minute webinar within the portal. We're only talking about it here for a couple of minutes. But essentially, Rockefeller was one of many oil tycoons back then. But then he bought oak barrel companies because he was restricted by the number of barrels he could buy. And then he gave himself the barrels he wanted and raised the price on others strategically. He then learned how to dry his barrels so they weighed a lot less, took all the water out of the wood, so his shipping costs went down. And then he had such a huge advantage, he started buying other people's oil refineries, but he also went and found that the restriction now of his oak barrel company was the oak. So he started buying all the oak groves that were independently owned and then became like one of the first vertically integrated big companies in America. which, at an extreme level is so effective, it like breaks the game of capitalism, right? Like if anyone ever designed anything we said today and it worked so well that all of a sudden your market share went up to like 95%, then everyone gets upset and you get anti-monopoly lawsuits and, it's breaking the law, et cetera. Was just highly effective in a small niche. I would guess since Amazon hasn't gotten whacked for anti-monopoly stuff, that probably none of us in this room are going to, but obviously don't engage in price fixing or unethical things. But the main point is like when you vertically integrate or just acquire strategic assets that are your bottleneck or your client's bottleneck, then they will like you more and they'll meet with you more and take meetings, right? Like us having a dual tool that instantly can compete 10 pitch decks against each other based on 10 custom criteria you give it, and have 10 pitch decks have a cage match within the AI tool, narrow it down to 5 of them, and then rank them based on likelihood that all of your capital could get wiped out, experience of the CEO, amount of collateral, fee levels, and then narrow it down to 3 and write 7 due diligence questions for those top 3 out of the 10 and do that all within like 2 minutes. That's like massively valuable for an investor who on stage at our last event said, yeah, I'm probably going to let my executive assistant go because she was basically just filtering deals. And now I can do it with the snap of my finger with this AI tool. And so the negative side obviously is people that aren't AI enabled sometimes get left behind. And I don't agree that that is a good thing, but it just shows the power of that tool and what these types of resources can do to get you meetings and build relationships. So to make it super practical, we started out, we were able to have the most visited website on family offices. There wasn't a ton of competition back then, to be perfectly honest, but because we did have that, it helped us grow a large networking group. We then put it on LinkedIn. It grew further. We got the best-selling book in the industry, wrote a couple for Wiley and Bloomberg, and then self-published 10 of them. And then we had the most number of LinkedIn groups, the most number of people on LinkedIn, and then it grew our conference series, et cetera. So one choke point, importantly, makes the next one easier. And I understand at the beginning, you need to usually start with one that costs you absolutely nothing. I mean, some of you in here are doing very well. So you could acquire a choke point that costs $500,000 or $1 million or $100,000. But once you get a taste of how strategically powerful some of these are, then you get kind of addicted, like, what's the next choke point? What's the next choke point? And you just start with the ones that are free and just take elbow grease. I mean, that's what I had to start with at least. But if some of you have the luxury of not starting that low in the game. So I won't read through all these just to make sure we get through everything today, but one title insurance group, they were getting 4 referrals a week just from current clients. And they just had a little 4-person team. They were on a list of 30 vendors from a bank. The bank said they're getting horrible service from the other title search providers, insurance providers. So they got on a top 10 list and the referrals went up. Then they got on a top 3 list and they went to go meet with the bank like Michael and Brad did. And they said, make us the only vendor and we'll have someone night and day servicing your clients and we will do the most amazing job. We'll blow your socks off and you'll have 0 dropped balls when it comes to title insurance. They did that and they had to hire a whole floor of temp workers to handle the 40 referrals that they were getting every day. And it just blew up their business through the roof. And that's how they became ultra wealthy. One relationship, one choke point with one bank that had massive flow. So it doesn't always have to be expense. It could be like explicit, meet in person, and change reality by having an agreement that's win-win for everybody. So I would encourage you to write down a note of what is a choke point. Like if one of our choke points is we want to be seen in the billionaire family office niche as a top provider of mental models from billionaires and working with $1 billion plus family offices. And that's a keyword phrase we want to own, meaning like when people look for that, we're seen as either preeminent or like a top 5 person in that niche who's super helpful. Our first step was, it took us 12 years of me following up every 2 to 4 months on billionaires.com. And then they finally gave in and we got it for a little bit less than half of what they were asking for that whole 12 years. So we bought that. That was one step. Now creating videos, interviewing billionaires, trying to get to 100 billionaire interviews. It says 33 here. We're at 46 billionaire interviews done now. All of this leads towards dominating the sandbox. But this is like the Jim Collins flywheel he talks about in Good to Great, where it's 10,000 pound piece of metal and just getting it to roll over the first time takes a ton of energy. It's very hard and it feels frustrating, but then it starts turning and going and going. And the first choke point is here because it's just starting to turn that wheel a little bit. And you get the next one, the next one. And because we had this, it made the interviews easier. Because we had a book with Wiley, it made the LinkedIn groups better. Because we had the LinkedIn groups better, it made our conferences go better. That helped us get the next book deal, helped us afford to buy billionaires.com. So it's just a big momentum game. So I'd encourage you to think just for a minute here, and then we'll keep on going. But like, what is a strategic choke point that is a major cost center for you? What would get you access to inevitably far more investors? What would get you better, more deal flow? What would help you partner with others and scale very quickly? And think of something that's needle moving, and think of 3 ideas. And then I would encourage you to focus on the one that costs almost nothing and you could get in place right away. Does anyone have questions on this that I could answer just to make it more clear on choke points in general? Yes.
Just within the sort of gravitational pull model, you lock enough choke points so that you'll be seen as the number one, choke everybody else out.
Yeah, the question is like, is this like a gravitational pull model of like lock these down so you'll choke everyone else out? I mean, it's really like out competing your former self, right? And then like I don't see it as like we're going to kill a competition. It's kind of like sometimes there is not even competition within this defined niche yet, hopefully. And so we're just carving out this broader space and adding more value. You're really being like, we're going to show you in the next section how we can be aggressively generous and be more helpful than anyone else in your industry to your investors. Some of your competitors won't like it because now, that people didn't like it when me at 29 years old would write a book for Wiley, and then some family office guru who's 70 years old hadn't written a book on it. And, I would hear that they don't like that. So you have to not care about that, I think. But yeah, part of this could be about getting the word out there. Part of it could just be getting capital in here and getting people into your office. Part of it could just be lowering your costs. So just whatever you want to solve, whatever your top bottleneck is. For a lot of people here, it's getting in front of more investors, right? Any other questions on this? Just to make it clear. The cool thing is that in the past, we would teach what a choke point is, and then some people would say, oh, okay, so it's this. And then it would not be correct. It'd be like, no, it's not really a choke point. And you have to think about it, digest it, come up with ideas. Sometimes we do like a 30-minute exercise just on this because it's so powerful. Today we're going through a lot of ideas. We don't have time to do that. But the cool thing is now with AI, I've taken all of my workshops, my 70-minute webinar, public information and information from Vern Harnish on the choke point topic that he said publicly, and then train this AI tool on it. So you can say what you're doing, where you're going, and it will brainstorm choke points with you. Obviously, I would not blindly trust anything you get from AI ever, but it'll probably get the wheels turning of like, hey, I'm thinking about this and this. What do you think? Or like, I'm trying to solve the bottleneck of high transaction costs, or I need to get in front of more investors, or I want to partner with people that could get me X. Give me some ideas to do that. And you can do that with audio messages on any of these AI tools, attaching a pitch deck, or just explaining what you're doing. And the more context you give it, the more helpful it will be. But this is like a super nerd on choke points if you ever want to brainstorm with it. And it's just one of the tools that is a base tool. It's not a VIP access tool. So everyone has access to this as a member. Any questions on positioning? Out of every section we covered today, I think it's my ability to position that's made us millions of dollars more so than anything else that we talk about here today. Like getting the right position and then doing the work to establish the position, I think is one of our key things. And because we know what works, that's what we're motivated to do more and more of over time. So this next section, if there's no questions, we're going to talk about architecting your position. If there's any questions on Zoom for the virtual attendees, feel free to submit them and I'll keep watching. In this next section, we're going to show you how to really protect your position and build it out. And if you don't do this, nothing else we talked about earlier really matters too much. It's really just going to be a waste of time to even do the thought exercise. So that's why this position is critical. This is what happens if you say, we're going to be the #1 platform of dry cleaners in Miami, Florida, whatever the random niches that you're in, that you're focusing like a decade on dominating, dry cleaners, Miami, Florida, and you want to build the biggest platform there and then have like an exit or then grow to all of Florida, whatever it is, right? But you want to start focused. This is what it looks like. Anyone else could wake up and say, oh yeah, I want to have the biggest platform of dry cleaners, Miami, Florida. Anyone who's a toddler could just wander into your niche, if they don't even know how to walk yet in your niche. They could just wander in on their knees, right? And you don't really want that. You want it to look like this when they look at your niche. Like, oh, well, he's like the king of dry cleaners in Miami, Florida. Like Brad said, like apartment king, et cetera, right? So you want a moat around the niche, you want walls around the niche, and you want people to want to partner with you versus compete against you, or find out how to take your model, learn from it, and then now you benefit as they take that to Nebraska or wherever else they are. So these are the 3 ways to really do that, I found. Writing, writing books nowadays has to be very concise books or nobody will read them, I find. Proactive selling, you'll still need to reach out to people who are qualified leads in general. But if you just reach out to people who have clicked on your email this morning, telling them about the 19 things they should look for when doing due diligence on any dry cleaning investment or any private equity investment, so that you're adding value to the investor, and now they can ask those 19 questions to every deal they look at, then you can just call the people that maybe have clicked on that email. So you know they're engaged right now in real time. If you combine that with speaking and video, then I find things go much better. And most people are not natural at speaking. I just talked about how I couldn't even eat the first time I spoke. Now I've spoken over 750 times at different live events, including 300 of our own. And with writing, when I was at Harvard, I turned in one of my final papers to my TA in one of the psychology classes. She was from the Czech Republic and her first language was Czech. And her first question to me, because it was all marked up in red, she said, "Is English your first language?" And it is, in case you didn't know. I'm just that bad at writing, and I've written 13 books. So that's how much you have to not care what other people think on some level, but obviously have someone check your writing to make sure it's professional. So this slide is like $1 million slide for some of you that will take action on it. No one taught me how to do this stuff for the investment world. I just studied Jay Abraham and Gary Halbert and Evan Pagan and Dean Jackson and Joe Polish and Dan Kennedy and Dan Sullivan and all those people and more, Robert Cialdini. And then I interpreted all of it for the investment world. And so Jack spoke at our last event at Mobile Home Parks. He said he had only raised $5 million in 4 years. He read my book on capital raising, which this workshop is based off of. And because of that book, he raised $55 million more. And it totally changed it. He said, instead of pitching people and investing in my mobile home park, I educated people on why anyone would want to invest in a mobile home park. He just flipped the script. He became the bear in the waterfall and attracted the salmon trying to get upriver to mobile home parks and attracted that flavor of salmon versus going to the side of the lake and throwing a spear into the water and hoping to catch a fish going by, because they weren't swimming towards him, right? He wasn't positioned. So this changed what he's doing. And I'm going to show you how you can do it too if you want to. So the thing about this is that if you do any amount of it, it starts to work like choke points. And you're like, oh, I should do a lot more of this. I can't believe it's working, right? And so the top part is articles and blog posts. They take little energy to create, especially with AI. But even if you make it yourself, pretty easy to write 3 paragraphs of some insight you had. Pretty easy to do a 20-minute podcast interview. But it's also easy to consume. It's not like a big investment on behalf of the investor to consume that information. And none of this will be effective unless you know what sandbox you're aiming for and what your crystal clear advantage is, because then you're positioning yourself in this niche sandbox, which only probably 2 to 4 other people in the whole world are competing for, if any. And then you're making yourself preeminent in that very niche sandbox. But this is low investment to make, low investment to consume. White papers, benchmark surveys, they take longer to put together. Again, with AI, not that long, but it take longer to consume as well, and less people go to that level and do that. Less people write books, and even less people will probably see you in person for a speech you give. You know, on YouTube, you can get a lot of people to watch your YouTube videos, probably goes up in here somewhere, but most people don't take the time to write a book or to give speeches at live events. They're like, oh yeah, well, I'm not a natural speaker. Or like, oh, that's not me. I don't have experience in that. And so how this works is, let's say you get a meeting with somebody that you met on the airplane ride home from here today, and then they end up investing with you. Okay, great. But if you get a meeting with somebody and you have this funnel, they're probably going to invest faster if they see that you are like the key master authority on your niche, or at least that you're just helpful to them versus everyone else that just pitches, right? You can follow up with them with this material. You could drip it on them over time and warm them up. We had someone on our email list for 11 years. They first started subscribing when I was writing the hedge fund blog. They then switched from the hedge fund industry to the dental industry. They're doing 11 million a year in the dental industry, replied to one of my emails after 11 years, asked to get coffee. We had coffee. And 9 months later, I invested in their dental practice that had 4 locations and about 12 million in revenue. And now we got out of that deal with a great return, and they're doing 22 million a year in revenue, but they were on the email list for 11 years. Hopefully it doesn't take that long for a lot of people you talk to. But the point is that some people will read an article, not hear about you again for a year, and then see you on YouTube, or someone will recommend your book, or they'll see you talk at an event. And when that happens, then there's more trust built. And if you're focused on a specific demographic, like for the Hawaii Family Office Retreat coming up July 15th, I hope to see some of you there. I'm focusing, since I live in the town of Kailua, I'm focusing all of our Instagram and promotion of that event on Kailua, because these are all like my neighbors, and to be a resident Kailua, you're definitely a accredited investor in general. And so by focusing on that niche, there'll be side benefits of building the funnel there, and I can easily meet them in person. Some are probably parents from our kids' school, et cetera. And so there's tons of benefits of doing this. But the most important thing here is that some people just have an AM radio station show once every Saturday. And I know someone who built 1,000 accredited investors and built a $100 million platform from an AM radio show once a week. Some people just have a podcast. And after doing that for 5 years, they put a bunch of podcasts into a book, right? And that person has grown $1 billion platform. Some people build out the whole funnel. Most people don't get started on a single piece of it. And if they do any of it, they're not very consistent. So it's important to do consistent things. And if you're here in this room, it's because you're not raising $1 billion a month, or you wouldn't have time to be here, right? And I wouldn't have time to be here if I was bringing in $1 billion a month, candidly, right? Like, I'm still learning. So that's the thing, is like all of us are looking to what to do that's new that we're not doing right now. This is something you can do that's new. You just have to think, what could be faked or easily done by AI, and do things not so easily done by AI? A live event, a video, etc. And so once you write a bunch of articles, it gets easier to put them together into a white paper, 9 white papers, you can write a book. If you make a PowerPoint slide with 12 slides, and on each slide you talk about a case study, a best practice, a top mistake to never make, then you do that speech on those 12 PowerPoint slides, then you can audio record and transcribe that speech. And then those can be the chapters of your book. And now you've drafted the whole draft of your book. I've written 13 books. That is the least painful way to write a book. I've done it like the most painful ways. I've written 600-page books, 70-page books. No one wants to read, including your own spouse and yourself, no one wants to read your 600-page book, right? No one. So the description of my AI tool that takes all my books, all my talks, all my workshops, all my speeches at all my events literally says, do you want to read my 1,900-page book? No, nobody does. Use this AI tool and find out what you want to know right now, right? Like, but no one wants to even read a 200-page book. They don't have to, right? So keep things concise, but just know that once you do any part of this, you could transcribe a bunch of podcasts and make a book. It's easier to speak once you've done a bunch of podcasts. So you speak a bunch and you love that, well, then you can record that and make it into white paper. So it just becomes easier once you get any momentum at all. And someone might bounce in between here and then ask for a meeting and then invest. They might bounce in here, tell a friend about you, and then they come and invest. They might bounce in here and never do anything with you. And that's okay, because there's 20,000, 50,000 people in there. You just need to work with 50 new investors a year, or 400 new investors a year, or 5 a year, right? Any questions about this before I move on? Like the benefits are, you can really saturate a niche with amazing content. You're being aggressively generous with being helpful. You grow your expertise, you grow your network. Even if you selfishly do this just to raise a whole bunch of capital, you can't help but become much smarter on the niche and more respected and make friends in the niche and get deal flow and be authority. The benefits are massive because nobody wants to do this at all, right? It's like, it's easier to blast 100,000 people with an email and cross your fingers, right? But too many people do that. Any questions on applying this to any of your niches to make it more helpful? No? Okay. Well, raise your hand anytime. Yes.
White paper there. We're going to finish reading it, give us your email, kind of thing.
Right. Using a white paper, and if you want to finish reading it, give us your email. I think that sometimes, for sure, it's worth trying to do that. I don't think there's anything like horribly wrong, as long as you've given enough value up front where they're just like loving the content. I think that's the trick, right? And like, if it looks amazing, they might opt in and give you their email before even reading it. But if you give people an appetizer, they're more likely to come into your restaurant and want the full burger, rather than being like, hey, don't even get a taste unless you give me money first, right? Or something. And their attention and their email address is like a form of money. It's like their attention, right? So, but yeah, good question. Any other questions on like how to apply this to some niche that somebody's in? Big companies don't want to do this because either they don't have to, because they're so big, they're growing like crazy, and they have a 20-person investor relations team, or moderate to big companies don't do this because their attorney just says no to everything they ever want to do publicly, even though their competition is on CNBC being interviewed and on a podcast, and like there's probably a way to get it done. So if your attorney says no to every single thing you ever try to do, then I would fire them and get one that's very experienced and sometimes says yes if you follow these rules, because that's usually the case. Usually you can do it, but never say this, don't do this, always disclose this, and make sure you do this with this footnote or something, right? That's what a smart, helpful attorney will usually respond to. Oh, cool. We got some questions here. Specific example of what you mean by blog post in today's world. Yeah, so traditional old school blogs have kind of died down a bit, but nowadays a lot of people do what used to be on a blog on their social media, and LinkedIn wants their LinkedIn newsletters to really take off. So when you write a LinkedIn newsletter, which is free to do on your company page or personal page, it pushes it out in an email blast to everybody who's subscribed to your newsletter. So you don't get their email, but it literally hits their inbox. And so we have put out 106 newsletter editions on our main newsletter. We started it 17 months ago, and we've got 58,000 subscribers that get that. And when we hosted our AI webinar recently, we had over 1,000 people register for the webinar. What was interesting is we had 138,000 people on our email list. And we got an equal number that came from our LinkedIn newsletter as we did from our CRM we've been building for 18 years. We've been building it on LinkedIn for 18 months. So that was crazy. And I was like, okay, we need to really get that LinkedIn newsletter to, 1 million people if we can. So that's kind of like a modern version blog. It's kind of like a LinkedIn newsletter. You can do Instagram Reels, et cetera, and have that be kind of where you're posting your thought leadership is another option. Oh, Oh, okay. Got it. Repurposing materials such as YouTube videos. Yes. Building content on Substack. I see some people with amazing success on Substack. I've not used it. I've not gone deep on that or read it, but some people do and have great success. When it comes to repurposing, we use a tool called Vizard with a V, Vizard, and it takes a YouTube video and chops up into YouTube mini shorts that are more consumable. And then you can use those on Instagram or YouTube Shorts. And if people like a YouTube short, they might watch a longer video. And it does a good job, like 8 out of 10 times on that. So thanks, Jay, for submitting those questions. What types of networks do you post on? Yeah, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I've gotten the highest quality by far from YouTube for whatever reason. So we're trying to triple down on YouTube. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to see what you thought about how that could apply to my industry, Bitcoin space.
How it applies to a new space like Bitcoin. The bad news is that there's a lot of people of a younger generation putting out YouTube videos on Bitcoin, right? That's the bad news. But anytime that there is a lot of people in a space and there's distribution channels that are owned and built by other people. So it could be that one of the podcasts in your space that's well developed, maybe they haven't figured out how to monetize that podcast yet. Maybe they could be a partner of yours, either on a performance basis, which could have regulatory concerns you have to watch out for, or on a more formal partnership basis after you get to know them. If they have a top 10 podcast on crypto or Bitcoin, and you can make them a partner or a board member, and now it's one of the 10 ways they're monetizing their massive funnel that they already spent all this time. Some people have massive funnels, and they don't have any of this. They don't even know why that they're meeting with people. They just fell into like this massive funnel of people, and they're like, how do I monetize this? And they're making 50K or 120K a year, but they have this massive funnel. And you might have spent all your time designing this amazing solution for 7 years, but you don't have the funnel, or your funnel is different, right? So tapping into other people's funnels that have already built and recognizing when someone has a robust funnel for your exact demographic can be a way that could be like a choke point. You partnering with him means that the very few other people on planet Earth that do what you do now can't partner with him because he's already your friend. You're already partnered, right? So that would be one way I would immediately look into it because there's already people established there. But I would also look via Instagram, via LinkedIn. Maybe some of those YouTubers and podcasts ignore LinkedIn, or they're not focused on a certain sub niche of the crypto Bitcoin space that you could tap into. Or a lot of their effort is so digital that you do best by going to events that maybe your wealthiest investors are 50 plus years old, and they go to high quality in-person events and they're less on YouTube maybe. I don't know. Those would be some of the things I would start with. Look into like who are the power brokers in the space, who controls the streams of eyeballs and controls the media streams. The ultimate position is to have you own and control the media streams, or partner with the person that does, and then figure out how to build your own while also partnering with them in a way that doesn't break up the partnership. Does that make sense for everybody in a way that could be helpful, hopefully? Awesome. Any other questions? James?
What content?
Yeah, great question. How often do I put out content in the newsletter and LinkedIn? So for YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn, we put out content every day. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. For the LinkedIn newsletter, It's more moderate depth content. And so I usually will do that 1 to 2 times a week. If I had my schedule dialed in a bit more effectively, should probably be doing it more often because we keep on growing the more we put out great content, and it also ranks SEO wise for different keyword terms. And so optimizing that, most people won't go through the trouble of doing this. Most people also don't have a very clear sandbox that they're trying to dominate. Most people don't have an investor avatar they're trying to attract. So those are 3 things stacked that most people don't do. If you also know what SEO is, as I know you do, because you're like a marketing expert, that's like a 4th layer that like almost no one does. And if you do that consistently in a niche where you only had 3 competitors to start with, they're not going to be doing those 3 or 4 things, right? So I think that like that's the power of some of these ideas is like implementing it, but then implementing it with way more focus, with a long-term goal that's focused in a way that's dialed in. Yes, I separate between the article feature and the newsletter. The newsletter, I do different content, but then when you push a newsletter out on LinkedIn, it asks you to post an update to your network about that newsletter. So I'll do a little half line, 1 line saying like, oh, if you want to see the 7 things I learned at the workshop this week from participant that raised $3 billion and et cetera, then like click on this newsletter, and then they click on that and it opens up the newsletter. Yep. Yeah, great questions. Any other questions on this? I'm glad there's a couple because it's relatively complicated thing to think through, I know, and some people are pretty skeptical that it would work, but it's worked amazingly well for us. And people say like, well, why would you write like another book? You've already written 12 books. It's like, well, if I didn't keep on getting water, I wouldn't put the bucket back down the well, like, because it makes me more money, like, because it helps people, and the people like I help them, and then they end up coming to our events, right? So like, why would you make the 57th AI tool? Like, because the first 56 worked pretty well, you know, like it's like, otherwise I wouldn't do it, you know? So any other questions on that before I move on? No? Okay. But feel free to keep on asking virtually or in the room. So this is an example of a book that I wrote for centimillionaires. So it's a very targeted investor avatar. We went out and bought centimillionaires.com, wrote the first book on centimillionaires. Interestingly enough, my first version of this book was called Centimillionaire Migraines, but apparently Amazon was so offended that we used the medical term migraine that kicked us off of Amazon and made it so we couldn't sell the book on Amazon. So we're like, okay, even though the subtitle said $100 million net worth family challenges. But the subtitle says 100 million plus net worth individuals, in case people don't know what a centimillionaire is, but we just wanted to be in front of the tide because everyone's obsessed with billionaires, and you get 34,000 searches a month on Google for billionaires. But there's only 3,000 and change of them, and there's 60,000 to 70,000 centimillionaires. They have less gatekeepers. They're super powerful to do business with. They're titans of their niches, but everyone seems to ignore them, and only 1,800 people a month look for a centimillionaire. And I just saw, I think it was Peter Thiel or Tim Ferriss on a podcast last week, where he said, oh yeah, my client works with a lot of centimillionaires, and the podcaster stopped and was like, oh, centimillionaire, like I've never even heard that term before. And like, that's how like unused the term is. But in the future, we think just like family offices and people telling me it was a waste of my time in 2007 to even focus on them, we think that 10, 20 years from now, people are going to be like, oh, maybe centimillionaires are like better to focus on doing business with than billionaires, all else equal, right? So that's me trying to get in front of a tide. You know, we do attract some because of that book and positioning now, but it's more like down the road, I expect that to be even more helpful. But we've put out 1,300 YouTube videos, 1,000 plus podcasts, and just a lot of thought leadership content. So we've learned a lot the hard way, and we're happy to share anything that we've learned that you have questions on. But like our first book for Wiley, they had us use their designer, and their suggestion was this really ugly purple and yellow color cover. And I said, no, I'm not publishing under that. And they're like, all right, let us come back with a couple more designs. They come back with another couple. They're still pretty bad, but we use their designer and put it out. And we just found that with our knowledge in the marketplace, it was better to self-publish and skip like, oh, we got the pedigree of like Wiley anointed us as being able to publish, and just do something that we could update. If we want to update our book with Wiley, they either say, no, we don't feel like releasing a new edition, or if I want to get my own book printed, they'll charge me $10, $15 a copy to print my own book. With this, I can charge $3. And if I partner with someone and for some reason the partnership doesn't go well, I can take the name out of the book and publish a new version the next morning, and now they're not in my book. With Wiley, it's like you're stuck promoting your bad partner for the next 10 years, right? So it doesn't really make sense. So those are some lessons I've learned when it comes to books, to make it like professional, institutional quality, clear, focused, and bring in the right type of person. Yes. I don't, but I've learned a lot the hard way. There's a KDP platform to publish through Amazon. I'd recommend going there. If you don't like that for some reason, there's one called lulu.com, Lulu.com, and then Barnes & Noble has self-publishing as well. But the KDP Amazon one is probably the best and most fluid, recognized one. We had someone that had raised billions of dollars of capital, a lot from institutional investors, and they spoke at our CapitalCon event where we've had 100 people speak at these 5 events, and all 100 people had raised $100 million or more, and they all gave a 10-minute talk. And as amazing as that sounds, it sounds like that knowledge would be worth like $1 million. I think nobody watches those talks in our member portal, like at all, ever. But I think it's amazing getting that knowledge. And what they said was that the use of thought leadership, everything we talked about here in this, they said is the holy grail of raising capital. They said that is what attracts the best investors, the most investors, works the most. You can use it to get an intro. You can use it for word of mouth. You can use it to drip. You can use it to close someone, et cetera. So it's interesting to hear that come from even institutional investors. If you raise capital the old school way, you get old faster because it's just frustrating and hard. It's like, you chose poorly, basically, I think is the line, right? So watch Indiana Jones too much as a kid. So we mentioned this earlier. Think about, well, it looks like I managed to misspell every word on that whole slide. Institutional quality at every turn, right? Yeah. See if you're paying attention by 2:30. Yeah. Yeah. Gotta fix that one. Yeah. Yeah. So basically with thought leadership, you just have to think, am I really building this trust with this thought leadership, educating them on the industry? Like, what am I trying to do to really improve things and keep that in mind? And this tool is one of the tools that we're most proud of out of all the AI tools. It's one of the top 3 that is amazing. It could change your whole life, honestly. If you're negotiating a transaction and somebody is saying no to you, or you just have a chance to design the transaction in a special way, you can tell this tool, it's trained on 1,000 deal structures. This is what we're solving for. This is what we want to prioritize. We want to protect equity. We're willing to back them with a little bit of collateral. Here's what the counterparty wants. Here's what could blow up the deal. As much context as you want. And maybe keep in mind, this is our pitch deck. This is what we do. And then you tell it that, it'll pump out 10 custom deal structures that meet your parameters. You can say, I like number 2 and 7. Show me 10 more like that. It'll do that again and again and again. And then you can say, I like number 6. Just add this one component, and it will do that. And then it will ask you if you want it to write the email to your attorney and the counterparty, selling them on why this is a win-win deal for everybody involved. And if you do that, like with billionaires.com, they told me literally, go away, stop emailing us. You've been doing this for over a decade. We're never going to do a deal with you. And then I changed the structure and they said, we'll do that deal if you close in 14 days. So no in the investment world, you just have to be politely persistent. And no in the investment world doesn't mean no. It just means not today, in the mood I'm in, with the level of caffeine I have, and based on that structure, the way you said it, right? But you meet in person and you make it happen with a custom structure and you listen first, then you can make things happen, right? So this could literally mean the difference of getting 12 million for your company versus 10 when you sell it, or raising 20 million a year versus 3 million in a year, right? This can make a huge difference, especially if you're going to close an anchor, like blue chip, big investor. They like to have their deal terms customized, and this way you can customize it in a way where it's good for everybody. And no attorney you can text 24/7 has even 100 deal structures in their brain and will instantly not get annoyed when you ask them for 10 deal structures and then again and again and again and again. And this one knows 1,000 deal structures, and it's free with your membership. We don't charge premium. It's not even a VIP tool. So I think like this, the AI tools, I think can be life-changing at the right moment. Yes. Yeah. If you have a rough term sheet, it can be very helpful, but you can just start from scratch and say, here's the basics of the deal. Here's our industry. Here's what the other side said they want or they're willing to pay, but I don't want to pay that much. So how do we structure something which still makes it a win, et cetera? That tool was so popular and helpful and impactful, not because 900 people have used it, but the people who have used it were just like blown away and said this is like a game changer for them. But because of that, we also did a letter of intent optimizer tool that's strictly just for letters of intent. And so at the core of the deal structure, might be getting things going on just like the core structure of the deal, like the very basics. But when it comes to a letter of intent that you've gotten from someone, you can also use that tool to improve a letter of intent, make it complete, make it more thorough. Yeah, Michael.
Selfishly, and when I get terms back from that private equity, this out here, I take their terms, drop it in there, and ask them
Yeah. Yeah. You can get terms and put it in there. And then
like a Word doc. If I
yeah, you can do a Word doc, PDF, a Dropbox link to a folder with files in it. You can do a zip file. You can do an audio message. You can now sync it to Google Drive for core GPT. I'm not sure if it'll still accept it for custom GPTs. And then OpenAI says that for all their custom GPTs, they don't feed like the master brain of OpenAI with what's uploaded there. But we've also unchecked the box that says allow ChatGPT to use these conversations to inform its model. So we unchecked that. But, just like Microsoft and Google and like who knows how many versions of America's NSA from different countries are listening to my whole presentation right now and recording everything we do in life and watching us through our cell phone cameras, right? I mean, you never know. It's big tech at the end of the day, just like Google, Microsoft. So obviously, there's a legal thing that came out recently where OpenAI is required to keep the history of certain chats, et cetera, that the courts are saying you have to, and OpenAI is like, well, we don't want to because we don't tell people that like we don't want to keep these. So obviously, I would not put anything on there that you wouldn't want someone reading one day, right? So that's just the nature of big tech, I think. Yes.
Yeah. Or anchor investors for the first time, what's what you've seen that's the most for most of the last interest?
Yeah, good question. So for anchor investors, what's the most common thing they ask for? The most common thing is that they'll say that they want either their downside partially or mostly protected, or they want a little bit less just generic fees that just come in like a blob when the deal closes. Like they just don't want like massive management, acquisition, debt arrangement, all these huge fees, because people say skin in the game. They might put in 10% of equity in the deal, but by month 9, they've gotten so many fees from the closing and the management fee, they have negative skin in the deal. And it's almost like you lied, almost honestly, in their eyes, because they're like, what skin do you have in the game? I mean, you spent your time on it, but now you're making a lot off the fees, even if we lose money as investors. So they want to see that they don't mind paying for the price of a Rolls Royce for a Rolls Royce. They just don't want to pay a Rolls Royce price and get a Honda Civic with no air conditioning and have no performance. So they want to know that you're going to perform well, but they also want to sleep at night. So if you make it so their money comes off the table, now everything else is gravy from then on, and you're just getting low to moderate fees till they get their money off the table, then you win handsomely as they're totally de-risked, and then you win amazingly well when you hit it out of the park. They kind of have a sigh of relief, like, okay, you kind of get it. I just don't want my money to die inside of your structure, and I want to have takeover controls. If you really mess this up royally and I give you a chance and you don't fix it and you don't fix it, then I'm stepping in and I'm going to fix it because I'm not letting my $1 million die on your vine. So they might be some like takeover controls they want to step in and fix the boat, recapitalize, get their friends in there. One centimillionaire family did one deal and we had to help them negotiate a replacement of their capital with another investor. And we just got their money out of the deal on good terms for everybody. And then they liked that we kept their skin intact 100%. And it really helped the relationship going through that effort. Any other questions? Yeah, correct. Yep, for sure you can. Yeah. And one thing to think on is just opening up a couple of our tools at once, right? And be like, okay, Investor Advantage tool, 1,000 investors speaking on stage. I wonder what they say about this term sheet. Deal Structure Ninja. Let's see what 150 white papers on due diligence will pick out missing red flags, et cetera. If you have a PPM that's 140 pages long, before you tell your attorney, yeah, it looks good, let's go with this to launch the fund, load it up in there, see what's missing, what terms are unusual, what would investors like to see, how to optimize it. No one attorney has a lockdown on all of those things. So those are different ways I would use it. Oh, and then for our due diligence tool, we'll get to that in a couple slides. Any other questions though? I thought maybe I saw another hand up. No? Okay. Awesome. Do you maintain and use an email list where you add people manually after the personal content, even if they never opted into one of your email lists? Does this include an unsubscribe list? So we have Active Campaign enabled. So when people email our team in Gmail, then it adds them to the CRM. We have tried in limited case studies having like, okay, there's 200 dentists and they're right in Miami. We're hosting this Miami event. Let's try emailing them some helpful content to try to get them to come to the event because it's such a targeted avatar will take the risk of like emailing them cold and see. It doesn't work very well. So out of the 138,000 people in our CRM, I would guess that 132,000 or so are like organic opt-in emails, and we clean up ones where that bounces hard or where they're not engaged for so many years, then we clean those off. So we took off like 12,000 emails recently. We were at 165,000 at one point. Let me know if any other, yes, following up, yeah. We use ActiveCampaign. We used to use HubSpot. We've used Salesforce before. I would probably use one of those three. We use Go High Level, and it just breaks if you have a lot going on. Like the programming makes it so things just clash internally if you've got tons of things firing at once. And it just melted down on us. And I'd reach out to customer service, and like I knew more of the technical stuff than they did. And they're like, "Oh no, I think it's this happening." I was like, "No, it can't possibly be that thing happening." And then they escalate it, and they still couldn't solve it. Still couldn't. And I was like, "All right, we're moving on." But with ActiveCampaign, the only downside I've found from that versus HubSpot and Salesforce is that the AI mafia have decided to make automatic APIs only with Salesforce and HubSpot on like every single AI tool on planet Earth. If you look, it's like, oh, just one click, API connect automatically with these two CRMs. So they leave you a little bit out in the cold. You have to like learn how to use Zapier or have someone connect through Zapier for some things to be automated easily. But you might save $20,000 a year or $10,000 a year as well. So just depends how many tools you want to plug into easily. It's the only downside I've found. Yeah, no problem. So some of my YouTube videos are like relatively bad because there's like birds chirping at 12,000 feet in Zug, Switzerland, or in Czech Republic. I recorded in front of the Prague Castle at sunrise, so no cars or tourists were around. But it's just getting it done. Your competition will worry about producing something that looks magnificent, and they will never produce anything because they're so worried about it looking like CNBC with a scrolling ticker at the bottom. So just put out genuine, authentic content, and I find that it works, and you'll run circles around other people. That's how we've put out 1,300 videos, and it works well for us. So you just have to get out and do it, practice, add value, and then you'll get feedback of people saying like, "Oh, I watched that video and it's amazing, and that's why I'm emailing you," or like, "That was super helpful." Biggest secret here I've learned is putting out mini series. So we did like a 17 episode mini series called the $100 million Rainmaker mini series. That's been popular. Our 14 episode How to Start a Family Office mini series, because they get sucked into the rabbit hole. Now all of a sudden they're watching like all the videos in the series. And if they watch that whole series, like Brad said, like you either like us or you don't, and you're probably hearing strategies you didn't hear anywhere else on YouTube. So you want to suck people down like a rabbit hole of content like that. Yes.
Video that works.
Yeah, I used to do podcast interviews that were 45 minutes long, and then my business grew. And I'd be like, "Oh man, I'm getting on this call between like small talk and the interview. There goes an hour of my day." And then I also realized that like my clients who are the wealthiest have the least amount of free time to listen to a long interview. So with my style, granted, some of the most popular podcasts in the world are these 3-hour interviews these days, which, I don't have time to watch, but apparently millions of people do. I've just gone to doing 18 to 22-minute interviews when I do them. But really for my episodes, I record videos that are, if it's for Instagram to promote something, 15 seconds or less. But for YouTube shorts, they do up to 3 minutes, but I really think it should be a minute or less most of the time. And I was just doing a little educational video. I just aim for 1 to 5 minutes, 1 to 7 minutes, and just talk about something laser specific. I think there's one more question. No? Okay. But I definitely encourage you to do videos. I had the chance to interview Brian Tracy when I was first raising capital. I listened to Brian Tracy every day on the subway in Boston, going out to Lexington from Harvard Square, and would listen to him for an hour a day, every day, back and forth. And he's part of the reason why I'm a success today. So I got to interview him a few times, and we have one of his interviews up on our website at familyoffices.com/audio3. And it's one of the only interviews with him on raising capital and growing an investment platform. But he says after writing 70 plus books and speaking thousands of times globally, the most important thing is the title of what you put together. In other words, like the name of your firm, the one-liner, the subject line, like the title of the book. He said there's so many people hire him, and it's obvious they never cracked the cover of the book because they want to hire him on a topic and then ask him to speak on things that he says never ever to do in the book. And he said it's super obvious they did not read the book, but just because I was the author on this book, then they hired me and I got a multi-million-dollar contract, et cetera. So that shows how powerful it is. You want people to actually read your book to love you even more, obviously, right? Otherwise, it's just seen as kind of a sham. So you have to really get the meat on the bun. But if you don't name the hamburger nicely, no one ever eats your hamburger. They don't know that there's even meat in the bun, right? That's important. You want unquestionable credibility so that people can see your manufacturing plant, they can meet you in person, they can see the assets you own, they can see your tech device, see who your partners are, et cetera. That's super important. We do much better with people that actually read our book, meet me in person, come to our investor summit. We invite our most valuable centimillionaire clients to come to our investor summits because selfishly, we want to use them to show them that we're not just have a pretty website and like some sort of fake organization. We want them to see the genuine value, that the people on stage are helpful and authentic, et cetera. Einstein said when he was talked to by a journalist, I didn't discover relativity. I just focused on nothing else for a decade. This theory existed before he was born, but he focused only on it, so he solved it. So what could you focus on to solve that other people are too distracted to focus on, right? And then you could be the Einstein of your sandbox because people see you as the one who, like people have told me, oh, you created the family office industry. Like you made up this whole family office thing. It's like, no, I for sure did not. I've never claimed that or said that, but people have that perception because of focusing on it for 18 years. We're almost to the end of the section, and we're gonna give you guys just a couple minutes to stretch your legs, and then we'll get into the last section of the day. But I wanted to share just a couple of quick notes before we do. So first of all, most people go into a pitch, just literally pitch the whole time. They do not focus on asking questions. They don't customize the pitch. They just go into robotic pitching mode, which is not very effective. Instead, when you go into a meeting, you should be asking a lot of questions. It builds your relationship. Like Brad talked about, he met with a bank. There's like a discovery process, and then they went into their 8-page proposal. You have to customize what you're about to say. All of us could talk for a very long time about what you're doing, but if you know what they care about, then you just talk about the part they care about first, and then go into a customized approach. If you went to the doctor and you walked in today, and they said, take these blue pills twice a day for the next 2 months, and then hopefully you get better for whatever the ailment is. Maybe your knee's hurting really bad. You'd probably be like, what? Like, you don't even know like what my problem is. Why would I take those 2 blue pills? I'm not taking those. What's in these? But how many times have we gone to the doctor and they run a blood test or they tap on your knee, they ask for history, they look at something, make a look on their face like they're thinking real hard, and then they do a test, they come back and say, take these 2 blue pills for 2 months, and then hopefully it gets better. And we don't go up and look at scientific journals. We don't see what the side effects are. We just pop those chemicals in our mouth twice a day and hopefully get better in 2 months, right? Like most of us don't have time to go and research side effects on pharmaceuticals, right? We follow it because it's a prescription from an authority figure who's listened to us. If the doctor didn't listen to us, you would not want to take those blue pills, right? So when you are meeting with someone, you can be more effective and you build your authority by listening. Stephen Covey says to be influential, you first need to be influenceable. If you're not influenceable by the other people's information, you're not going to influence them. Just like if you can't influence yourself, you won't influence other people. How can you get other people to align with what you want if you can't even get yourself to align with what you want, right? You have to take yourself more seriously than other people can take you. So that's what this diagram is about. Yeah, go for it. Right. Yeah, I think that there's one thing is that when people are coming towards you, they feel like they already know you. That's why YouTube works so well. Is they're like, I feel like I've already met you. I've seen you like 100 times on YouTube, and then they're comfortable coming here. With Dan Sullivan, you have to do his programs for 1 year minimum. I did a 10K, 25K, and 50K a year program with him, but I already made so much money off of spending 1 year listening to every podcast episode he ever put out, reading every book he ever wrote. I had so many Dan Sullivan ideas already made me a bunch of money. I was like, sure, I'll pay you 50K. You already made me like 500K. So it's like negative cost to me, right? And so if you can get someone to come to you because they already trust you, their guard's already down. If you can do what Brad did and share something that's vulnerable, their guard goes down as well. They're like, oh, okay, this person isn't pretending to be a perfect human being that's never made a mistake in their life and they're trying to scam me. So I think that helps to point out, the negative of your deal, something that might not have gone perfectly along the way. And then just polite persistence and following up and not trying to hard close someone the first time you meet them so they get comfortable over time. Sometimes people take a little bit to open up, especially if they've been taken for a ride a few times or they're super busy, et cetera. So those would be like the things that come to mind to me at least. I don't know if I'm like the absolute expert on that. I'm a real introvert and I created this business so people would come up to me to shake my hand. If I was here, like during our own cocktail hours at summits, I like hide away and come down late on purpose. I don't want to go around and shake everyone's hands. I'm just not extrovert at all. I just designed it to supplement the fact that I suck at networking and I don't like it. Daphne loves it. He loves talking to people. My wife does. My whole sales team does. It's just not me. That says, I will stay up here afterwards, and I'm happy to talk to everybody. It's just not like if I have to choose activities, I would hide away in a corner and build AI tool number 58 versus network, right? So, was there another hand up or a question? Yes. Yeah, good question. So lately, by having a lot of the IP in these different platforms, I'll think about what it takes to be 1 out of 1,000 from my perspective, but then ask the billionaire tool, ask the investor advantage tool of the 1,000 investors that spoke on stage, et cetera. So I'll ask those tools, but I'll also ask AI like GPT and Grok for like a shocking statistic on a topic or an industry to start out a talk or content with something that's shocking and kind of grabs the person. So I find that that is really helpful. Besides that, I look at our open rates on emails and click rates and newsletters to see which ones went crazy and what's done really well, or what other people have done that's really taken off, like Brad said, like emulate what's doing super well. That said, a lot of my success has been elbow grease, laser focus, knowing the sandbox, good positioning, one-liner, little tweaks and learning. But I'm not the most engaging human being on planet Earth. I don't have like millions of followers because my videos are amazing. It's really just like consistency, focus, trying to add value. So I think I could like improve massively there in terms of like the energy level or in terms of how I do it. So if anyone has amazing tools for that, then definitely let me know. So copywriting is we've done a full day workshop on copywriting, and we're going to spend like 90 seconds on it here. So we're going to be like a little cheat sheet. Copywriting has nothing to do with trademarking in this sense. This is the field of marketing where people spend their whole life, who usually were first good at sales, and then they get good at writing words that convince people to do things. It's selling through written word, right? So copywriting, number one best practice, the headline, just like what Brian Tracy said. The hook, getting people engaged. The subject line, a subject line with somebody's first name usually gets opened on average 30% more than if it doesn't have their first name in it, is what Marketing Sherpa showed in a study. Other best practices are telling a story, engaging, using the word you, like sometimes you wouldn't think that this would happen, etc. So just speaking conversationally and not too formally is important. That's one reason why I had a hard time like at Harvard with the writing, because I was so used to conversational blog and book writing that they're like, no, that's not proper. I was like, okay, well, it's what works in the real world, God forbid, right? And so when you think about everything you do on every piece of copy you put out, just make sure that the best practices of like getting attention, focus, the headline, the copy, story writing, using pictures, that you do that and pay extra attention to that, because I never see this talked about at investment conferences. And there's a whole field on this. There's books you can write or you can read on copywriting if you want to go deeper with it. So there's something to pay attention to. All right, this is the last 2 slides till we take a little 10-minute break. Let you stretch your legs, get water, coffee, then we'll be on the last section of the day. A master due diligence questionnaire is something that every single one of you should have, but almost nobody does. And now we're going to give you a way to do it super efficiently. So in the institutional world, you have to have a DDQ, or you have to complete their due diligence questionnaire, and there'll be 30 to 70 questions. And I filled these out from scratch, and it literally will take me 6 to 10 hours, and then you should review it. You want to put in a couple graphs and credible stats and show you don't have style drift, or show what happened when your CIO left and you had to replace them, that your performance didn't nosedive, all those types of things. The reality is, though, if you're working with an investor who's worth less than $300 to $500 million, they will never ask you for a due diligence questionnaire. Not once in 18 years have I met someone worth less than $300 to $500 million that says they require a due diligence questionnaire, but every single institutional investor does. And every investor would appreciate it if you had one, because many times investors will say, okay, well, we've gone over a few things. We've met 3 or 4 times. Like, what else should I be asking? I don't know much about Bitcoin, or I don't know much about data centers or dry cleaners. You're the expert in that, not me. And so what you do is take sharp questions they should be asking, things you would ask your peers if you were going to trust them with your money. This helps you over disclose, which protects you liability wise. You can say it's not only in the PPM, it's not only in the pitch deck, it's also in the DDQ document. And we also said it at this meeting that I transcribed on Zoom. So for sure you knew that was a risk. So it covers your backside, but more importantly, it makes the investor feel comfortable moving forward. And so how do you come up with like the 30 to 50 questions? Well, we have the Dewey due diligence tool trained on 150 due diligence white papers and checklists, and investors can use this to find information missing, see if it's mostly hype, see if it's has red flags and get questions to ask. But prompt number 4 can be really helpful for you. So you can use these to see what an investor might ask you when you're raising capital. But also you can use prompt number 4, and what we'll do, and we used this on Thursday last week, you upload a pitch deck, we upload a transcription of a board meeting, and we said, write 30 sophisticated, dialed in, specific to this niche, due diligence questions that an investor should ask before allocating, specific to the context of this offering, and answer them with the pitch deck and the board meeting notes. And it did that, but it only wrote like a sentence and a half answer for each. So I said, no, give me a moderate sized answer that has got like moderate meat on it. And it redid it in like 30 seconds. Then we downloaded that, put it in a Word document, sent it to the client and said, please review every word, because this was written by AI. There will be some mistakes. You'll want to expand on some. You'll want to add a graph. You want to add a timeline, a date. You might want your attorney to review it if you're going to be using this and you're making statements and disclosing things. Saying you have revenue when it's an LOI and it's not enforceable, saying you have revenue when it's predicted future revenue, you can go to jail for lying about such things, right? So you do not want to rely upon what AI spits out. You want to use this to draft something rapidly. I saw a couple hands go up. Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment.
I mean, our biggest success was actually 2-part.
Okay.
Diligence folder that has the document.
Right.
So the media, the PDFs of what you need,
Exactly.
please do it in an organized and document.
It's funny you say that because no one does.
Put all your financial documents together,
Right.
corporate policy, whole stuff. Then we developed the FAQ,
Right.
which then we unpack
Cool.
the question into the answers.
Sure.
And that, so by doing both,
Yeah.
we felt that was the best success. Not felt, we know that's
Yeah.
been the best success.
Awesome.
Someone who is looking.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the comment was like to have a due diligence data room, and nobody organizes these things. You open it, there's 118 files with folder names that make no sense to any other human being on planet Earth. So organize them with like 7 folders with subcategories, et cetera. Even have a read me first document that says this is how you navigate it. And then also have a due diligence questionnaire or an FAQ. Also, one thing I think that would be sharp is to create a notebook LM or a custom GPT with all of your stuff uploaded to it, so the investor can ask questions and just get their instant answers from that tool if it's information that you feel comfortable doing that way.
Saved us also when then the added in documents in there,
Right.
automatically ping
Oh, okay.
our clients and all,
Cool.
so that they were notified that there was some good news
Sure.
from their legal
Yeah.
environments,
Sure.
instead of them trying to track us down.
Right. Right. Right.
No,
Yeah.
what that did for them was that all things being equal, it was
Yeah.
easier to do business
Yeah.
because they told us when changes happened. They,
Right. Yeah, for sure.
if you're competing, but you have that one little extra edge.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot about what today is. I was trying to get to it before we had restroom break, and drinks and coffee break for 10 minutes here. But I'm not quite getting to the slide where I'm saying like, these are the 5 things everyone misses up that I've been talking about since this morning. So we'll get to that right after this next break, promise. But, to your point, it's all about having a 0.1% edge, because the person might just allocate to 3 self-storage groups over 3 years, and the lion's share might go to the one they like best, or they might only allocate to one dental practice to see how it goes first, learn from it for a year or 2. And then, so the winner gets the lion's share or everything, and second place might get nothing. And then you didn't get anything from your time invested. So it can be like harsh that way when raising capital. So it's just about that little edge. So from someone who's raised $3 billion to say like, have a data room, have your due diligence questionnaire or an FAQ. A lot of people don't naturally think about this. And this tool, if you ask it, what should I put in my data room? I've never built one of these before. It will give you an extensive list. And then you should organize it well and then ask it questions and have this be your due diligence prep consultant for raising capital. And it could be the difference of converting at least some of the investors, and it will convert some others faster because now they're comfortable with you. And you're like, oh, it's more dialed in than any other company that I've invested in at this level, because it's institutional, like enterprise quality way of operating. And every investor wants this, even though nobody under 100 million will ever ask for it, ever. Yeah.
For 15 years.
For 15 years, yeah. Right. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, a couple quick more comments. Yeah, Michael. Sure.
Hard to facilitate networking with Apple.
Yeah.
be interesting to know who are investors looking for
Sure. Well, I think in this room, it's capital raising workshops. I think we're all a bunch of capital raisers learning together today. So at our normal events, we have between 39 to 46% investors. One of our workshops recently, we had like 52% investors on the roster. And then some people don't show up after signing up on the roster. But today in the room, I think every person here is raising capital. They wouldn't be here to learn about raising capital probably. But these are the only capital raising workshops we're offering the whole year. And we just miss doing them because there's so much we can share. They can be so massively helpful. And we want to de-risk the fact when someone comes to the investor summit, they're like, oh, I was trying to raise $10 million for this first event. And like, I didn't raise it. And like, now I'm kind of upset. I didn't get my ROI. But we didn't get a chance to tell them any of this stuff that would have been like so helpful to them, right? I just talked for like 15 minutes and then the summit starts and then it's a fire hose of information. And then like, so we want to share the best practices and make sure that it gets transferred. But there are people in the room here that have built and sold their business, and now they raise capital and they invest. I definitely see some sitting here in the room, but I think everyone here is raising capital, or they probably wouldn't be here. So, but it's different than most of our events. Yes, yeah, yeah. AI makes it easy to fake stuff too, right? So that's why meeting in person is more important. Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you said that. I mean, our workshops in August will be the artificial intelligence implementation workshop, but our workshops the first week in November is going to be on due diligence, deep dive due diligence, how to prep thoroughly, how to do better. And also you can add value first to an investor in your niche by giving them a due diligence infographic or worksheet about like, before you put money into any deal that you're looking at right now, ask them these 30 things. And you already have the answers to those 30 things. So you're probably going to do very well if they do that, right? Other people will not respond or take a month to reply to those 30 questions. That's my experience. So I think that's really critical and appreciate that comment. Just 10 seconds here. One test by a multi-billion-dollar institutional consultant. He said people would pass flying colors in the office, fill out an RFP, everything amazing. Go out for drinks to talk about how they're cheating on their wife for the 9th time, or how they are suing their partner, or how they really want to launch a crypto fund, and will you back them with your endowment fund for their new crypto fund that they're starting on the side? And then they would fail over a drink of alcohol or two all the time. He said it was not just sometimes, it wasn't just something funny to say. He was like, that was one of his top pieces of advice. The second one is to order someone you're hiring or partnering with or investing with, and after they order the food, tell the server that you'd like them to burn it or bring steak instead of chicken, and just see if they flip out and curse at the person. Do they lose it over a piece of chicken? Like maybe they're not going to do so well if interest rates go up, or if like you lose a key employee, right? Like maybe run the other direction, right? So these are things that cost almost nothing. They're kind of interesting little due diligence tricks. The last one is just when you do an LOI for something, usually a longer LOI gives you more time to raise, more time to be comfortable with acquiring something. So you can say, well, to complete our due diligence, we need things 1 through 13. So we'd like to just put a 45-day LOI on this. But that clock starts once you give us items 1 through 13. And then they take weeks to give you items 1 through 13, and it turns into a 90-day or 120-day LOI. Not everyone will agree to that, but it's somewhat reasonable to be like, well, we can't really be on a clock if you haven't given us what we need to actually understand what you're doing here. So it's just a little trick I've learned from family offices. All right, it's 3:15, so we'll come back here in 10 minutes. We'll start at 3:25 sharp if you want water, coffee, restroom, and then we'll get through the last section of content for the day. So I appreciate your attention, and thanks for being here.